good? Welcome to the first episode of What I Wish I Knew. I'm Matt from the IT Chameleon, and I'm here to teach you a little bit about some of the things I wish I knew before starting my first Homelab. All right, guys, let's get started. So pretty much a lot of y'all might be familiar with an ISP. You might not know what it stands for, but it stands for Internet Service Provider. And pretty much for most of you all, that's probably an AT&T or Xfinity or anything of the sort, and pretty much they probably have a router in your house that you connect your phones and mobile devices, computers, anything, Xbox too, right? And pretty much that's gonna be this triangle here. I know it's a terrible triangle, but bear with me, right? And so pretty much you want to pass through the internet from that router to your own personal router that you're gonna either go get from Walmart or Goodwill or wherever you can find a router for cheap. I got my first one for about $50. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. And what we're doing here is we're pretty much creating our own network, right? And the reason you want to do that is because you don't want to be doing any testing with your Homelab and pretty much take out all the internet for this particular network, right? You want everything that you do to affect this network, and there are other security reasons for this that we'll get into on another video, but pretty much I just want to explain how this works, right? So your ISP probably gave you an IP address similar to this, 192.168.0.1. Well, on your new network, this router might have an IP similar to 10.0.0.1, right? Well, what's gonna happen is after you've set up this router, you can go ahead and you can get your first server. All right. So with your first server, this is pretty much going to be what we're going to end up calling a hypervisor, right? And I'll explain what a hypervisor is later, but let me label it so we don't forget. All right. So that's your hypervisor. Your hypervisor is going to inherit the same IP address here, right? It's going to become 10.0.0.2. And then from that hypervisor, you're going to be able to spin up virtual machines, right? Virtual servers. So you don't have to have a bunch of physical servers in your house causing heat, running up your electricity bill. You run one server, and that's all you need to run multiple servers, right? Multiple servers that you don't have to physically touch, physically see, none of that, right? And what happens with those servers is that they also inherit the IP addresses from this network. Since we created this one first, it will more than likely be 10.0.0.3, 10.0.0.4, and finally 10.0.0.5, right? Okay, so now you have a network, right? But you might be wondering, okay, this hypervisor is creating all of these servers, right? And how are these servers connected? Well, let's show you exactly how, right? So like we mentioned, this hypervisor also created these two. So let's draw an arrow, right? Well, when you build out your first server from your hypervisor, ideally if you're running Windows, this is going to be your domain controller running Active Directory services, right? And the reason for that is so you can create what's called a domain, right? And a domain is just pretty much something that you're probably familiar with. You just never knew the name of it, right? A domain is how if you go to school or work and you notice that any computer there, you can pretty much sign in with the same user account and user password. That's what a domain allows you to do, right? It pretty much allows you to just have information that travels from one computer to the next because you have what's called a user account, right? And so basically, that's how we have this network. Everything is in the same, network, same IP addresses. Everything can connect to each other for the most part, right? Okay, so you might be wondering, like I mentioned earlier, what exactly is a hypervisor? Well, a hypervisor, for in the nutshell purposes, is pretty much just a server with an interface that allows you to create multiple virtual machines, right? So your hypervisor, since it's a physical server, one of the most important things it does is it allows you to disperse resources, right? So when I say resources, what do I mean? I mean CPU, which we won't discuss much in this video, RAM, and storage, right? The reason we're going to focus on RAM and storage is because these two are really going to determine, for the most part, what kind of server you need to get, when picking out what you're going to run your hypervisor off of, right? And granted, hypervisors can be, virtual. They can be in the cloud, but for the purpose of this video, we're going to talk about it as if it's physical, right? And so, when searching for your first server, one of the things you should know is that you can have limits on the amount of RAM and storage that you can put in a server, right? My first server, I could only have a max of 16 gigabytes of RAM, and that will limit you, right? If you want to do some crazy things with this Homelab, that's not the server that you want starting out, right? But it's a good start. It'll show you how to create you can use it to create your own network and spin up your first couple of virtual machines, but you won't be able to do anything crazy. Yes, you can run a network, but you probably want a little more. You probably want a server that has a little more space, for you to add more RAM. Because it allows your Homelab potential to grow, right? So hypothetically, let's just say we have 16 gigabytes of RAM and 3 terabytes of storage, right? Well, from this hypervisor, we're basically going to take resources. Well, if we started with 16 gigabytes, what you got to understand is that this hypervisor, it's already using up some of that to even run the software that we're using for this hypervisor, right? And a hypervisor, you might have heard of VMware, you might have heard of Windows servers hypervisor or whatever. It's plenty of different choices, but basically, to even run this, you're probably using up maybe 4 gigabytes on that server, right? Okay, now we're down to 12 gigabytes. Who cares, right? Well, that's gonna start to matter pretty soon, right? And this domain controller running Active Directory services, you're probably gonna want to spend another 4 gigabytes, right? Now you can see where we're going, huh? Like, now we only have 8 gigabytes left. So if you wanted to get you a VPN server and maybe a test or application server, there's a lot of different applications that you probably use in the workplace that you would want to test out and learn more about at home, because that's pretty much the reason for a Homelab. Well, this test application server, I'm sorry, if you want to run most apps, you're probably going to need 4 gigabytes of RAM, or else it just won't run, to be honest. It could probably get by on 2 gigabytes of RAM, but it's just going to be way too slow, and it's going to cause problems, and it's not going to really mimic anything that you would see in the real world. At least I would hope it wouldn't. You have some places out there where they might be doing things of that nature. Now, if you want a VPN server, we're left with just another 4 gigabytes, right? But the problem here is that you might not even, have luck getting that to run. You might have to humble yourself and go to 2 gigabytes, right? Now you have an underperforming VPN server and, a decent domain controller and a decent test and app server, right? But that's all you got. We started at 16 gigs, we went down to 12, we went down to 8, and then we went down to 4. And after using this 2 gigabytes, we have 2 gigabytes left, right? Which we should probably leave open, because you never know. It's just, I wouldn't recommend using 100% of your resources. Although you might be able to pull it off, it's not smart to do. Now, we just talked about RAM, but storage is also important. Granted, we have a lot of storage, Most servers should be able to pull off letting you have multiple terabytes of storage. So we can afford to give 100 gigabytes of storage here, 100 gigabytes of storage here, 100 gigabytes of storage here, and barely even feel it. We haven't even used the terabyte yet. But the reason this RAM matters is if you want to get into running some file servers and things of that nature, it matters. A file server, you might want, I don't know, 2 terabytes of space on there. But if it's a file server, you're gonna want another 4 gigs of RAM at least, I would say. You want that server to be available and operating at all times. So it's very important that that's the case. So I just gave you a lot. I don't want to overwhelm you, but this is pretty much how you should understand creating your first network for your home lab, because this will help you make a lot of decisions on what server you need to start out with, right? Or if you just want to go straight cloud, right? It's terrible cloud, but if you just want to go straight cloud, it could be expensive. You'll probably have monthly fees, but at least with physical, you pay once for for this network. You set it up, you buy this server and this router, and you're mostly done. Hopefully you pick something that's not going to affect your electricity bill. Like I use the micro servers from HP, and it works out fine for me. It doesn't even affect my electricity bill, but I have some expanding to do. That 16 gigabytes of RAM doesn't really cut it, but it's all up to you. I just wanted to make sure that you were aware, because when I started, I wasn't as aware. So, this has been What I Wish I Knew. I'm Matt. Like, comment, subscribe. Go to the itchameleon.com. Subscribe to our mailing list. It tells you exactly when we drop videos, when we drop new content, all of that stuff. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the IT Chameleon. And we're also on LinkedIn. Check us out. It's been Matt. It's been real.